remember they're changing my voice. So I was talking about Cardin, the school I went to in San Jose during the 80s. Okay, it must have been like 85 or so, 86 when I was in first grade. And basically, the teacher in my first grade class, she was probably about 60 years old, maybe even 70. She was an older woman with white hair, white and gray hair, and named Mrs. Sullivan. Okay, and she was probably born around the time of World War One. So you see, liberals talk about people have an unconscious bias, you know, when they talk about white people and they say they have like an invisible package of unearned assets, things they didn't work for, but because they're white, they naturally get. I'll tell you, anyone who grew up in the 80s or before has no doubt in their mind that that's the case. Okay, and people are just plain stupid about it. My teacher, when I was in first grade, literally grew up as a young adult during segregation. Okay, she was like 20 in the 40s or something, 30 in the 50s. Okay, she grew up and spent not only her childhood, but being a young adult in segregation. And somewhere during that time, shortly after segregation or during that time, Cardin School was built. But what was it built for? It was built for white people first and foremost, right? It was built for white people to peck their own people, okay? Because you don't send somebody to what seems like a military school, right? You have a uniform, a little crest, a little patch on your sweater, have presidential fitness awards. I had, all kinds of, all the way going down my sleeve, blue presidential fitness awards, okay, to go on my sweater. So when people saw me there, I might have gotten bad grades at times, but they seen all those patches on my sweater, and they had to respect it. You know what I'm saying? They had to say, hey, this guy is superior to you in this aspect, And most kids didn't put much stock in getting good grades. I mean, it mattered to them, but they weren't like, wow, you get the best grades in the class. But they saw those patches on my sweater. So there was a lot of jealousy, okay? There was a lot of unspoken racism that wasn't really expressed, right? They weren't allowed to call me names and something, but you could tell that they resented me being there. And before I was even there, the purpose of Cardin School, if I'm right about when it was built, I mean, it was rather elaborate. It wasn't built overnight. It must have been built, years before I was there. So it probably was built in the 60s, or the 50s, maybe the 70s. Now I kind of find it doubtful. Okay, it's just like Webb School, where where I went to high school, this boarding school. It used to be an all-white school, and there was an older guy there. He was like freaking 80 years old or something, and his name was Mr. White. You can't make this up. It's almost like it's not true, but it's true. You know, these people had a certain mentality that they're gonna make sure that their social club network and the white privileged families and the alumni groups and social clubs that give them money, they're gonna make sure that they look out for them in a way that's demonic and give them the unfair leg up, and make sure that attractive females, including minorities, who work for them as secretaries, and they're having sex with them and they're coercing them, and they're like, I really need this job, and they're turning them out. Okay, when you think about it, it is disgusting as hell. So I see in the news the other day, it says that these two kids, one 18, one 16, okay, now this is kind of disturbing, kind of brace yourself. It's in like Fort Lauderdale or something. They walk upon some chick, some adult female, why she just got home, and they kidnap her, okay, and they rape her multiple times. Usually the news, I don't know why they do it, but I guess it's the different news channels. They say, oh, they're charged with sexual battery, and then they describe it as multiple times. They're like trying to add details so you picture it, and it seeps into your soul and it affects you. And if you haven't put on the armor of God, you're likely to start fantasizing or something like this. So they say, that they raped her multiple times, forced her to withdraw money, forced her out the car, and then took off. Okay, can you imagine thinking that, hey, you're going to rape this person? There's probably DNA evidence all over the place. You're going to take the car. Did they even take it to the chop shop? I don't know. They didn't say that part. Okay, there's probably DNA evidence on her and on the car. You dropped her off, the vehicle, and you took off. Okay, and you just had to withdraw money, so they might have you on the video camera at the bank. You see what I'm saying? It's freaking. It was just like they were so desperate to fulfill their intimacy needs. You know. Now, during slavery, there was a mental illness, is what they described. It was really not true. It was described by Samuel Cartwright, called drapetomania. The second part is mania, like manic bipolar disorder. This is part of why I'm against the CARE Act. That was introduced by Newsom, or he signed the bill or whatever, okay, where they give more power to mental health. Mental health is racist as fucking shit, even if it's a black psychiatrist. That's like saying if there's a black overseer, that magically the plantation isn't racist. It is racist as it gets. Okay, they drug people literally for not upholding white supremacy. And the drugs are basically eugenic pills. They address symptoms, and I've said this before, if I hit somebody in the head with a fucking hammer, I can address their symptoms too. Now the symptoms are gone, and you're kind of like you're on psych meds, and you're like, yeah, huh, okay, kind of droggy and so on and so forth. And after a while, they say the symptoms go down. After a while, I hit you in the head every day, and I kind of calculate how to hit you, you know what I'm saying? You'll probably get used to it to some degree too. That doesn't mean that that's the cure. So there's that. And these are powerful psychiatric medications. One like Adderall, I believe it's called. It's just slightly different chemically than methamphetamines. And these are potent drugs that they're quick to prescribe. And they have a long history, without skipping a beat, from their beginning onward, of drugging political dissidents. There is no logical oversight. And when you talk about, well, they'll have a public defender. I know for sure that public defenders are basically worthless, and that when we're talking about mental health cases, even if they cared, there's nothing they can do. The prosecutor or whoever will present the case and say, hey, their family reported them screaming and yelling and da 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 da, and they'll have them testify, and they'll say, hey, this person, is paranoid, schizophrenic or something, and his neighbors and his family all agree that this person has these symptoms, and obviously they won't admit to themselves. This is a nation that has not addressed psychological operations. There's psychological operations going on all the time. Hell, while making this video, the government is watching me and determining how much to fume me. And I have 22 witnesses on record. I filed a police report, and I told the dispatch, I told the officer that I have 22 witnesses. I've told other officers when they've come here to treat me unfairly that I have witnesses. They don't care. I've showed them a hate crime on the wall. They don't care. And if they did care, there's nothing they could do about it, kind of thing. There actually is something they could do about it. They could make a big fuss. They could stand with me. They could make that the priority of their life, but they're not going to do that because that Masonic functionalist philosophy. Masons basically are Luciferians in that they accept the boundaries of the world. Their argument is for functionalism, and you see it in their writings. You see it in the Age of Enlightenment, where Masons were very much involved. They were propounding functionalism, pragmatism, realism, and rationalism. And when these philosophies, as propounded by them, as discussed by them, are about accepting the boundaries of the state, they'll say things like, hey, we can't stand up for those people, or they'll take our businesses. And that's not how it works. Maybe we can throw them a bone from the inside. A lot of them are cops and politicians. They do not believe in taking and standing firm for moral precision, not even close. Okay, and they use wordplay. When they talk about a moral compass, they're talking about a moral, mentally ill, and El, the Canaanite deity, okay, a kind of LGBT sodomite deity, right? Canaan and Sodom and Gomorrah and the Jordan, I believe the Jordan River, are connected. The Phoenician Canaanite system that Greece adopted, as they based their systems on the Phoenician Canaanite system and Egyptian system and Middle Eastern and North African systems, okay, which ultimately come from, I'd say, people who are more like West Africans, because it has to do with where sub-Saharan Africans and black Africans live, and their martial art prowess that established Egypt versus these other groups of people. So they whitewashed, they nerd washed the martial arts systems of Horus, the martial art deity of Egypt, right? He's a god of war. What kind of war? Well, he has a bow and arrow, he has a spear, he has a sword, a short sword, and a sickle-shaped sword, and so on and so forth, where Horus is a god of African martial arts, okay? And that's part of why there's a pyramid on the dollar bill with the unfinished pyramid, because they cannot finish it, because they're not martial artists. They've adopted their pagan witchcraft system from a martial arts system. They replaced the sword and the knives, the flint knives of the pharaohs, with a magic wand. Okay, and that's some bitch ass shit. And their magic wand became a musket at some point, and they say that the white man's magic boomstick. Okay, so it's obvious that people's needs aren't being fulfilled because of the oppressive and racist white cultural tree that dominates society. Well, I'm going to have to end it right here. If you have any questions, put in the comments.